best word for it. Lost my words.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, Dana. What is going on?
Engaging in a recording of two guys talking toys.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Can I join?
Yes. Coincidentally, I need a second guy.
Well, that works out. So,
Yeah.
what happened to the last guy?
You don't want to know. It involves a bag of lime and a shovel.
Maybe possibly a farm of pigs.
That would be much cooler. Pigs are expensive these days. Folks be broke.
That is true. They are some hungry animals. Not quite as hungry as hippos, but they're pretty darn hungry.
Right, but if you could just feed them marbles, you'd be all right. See,
you'd be set.
I have a bag of marbles right here.
You're set. That's good for like 2 hippos.
Right. Why do I have a bag of marbles, you may ask? I don't know. In case I have to set like a Home Alone booby trap at the bottom of the stairs, maybe.
That's right up there with the pair of heating utensils to make sure they can't get in through the front door.
Right. Hey, did you get anything new?
I did, actually. It is somewhere to the right of me. There we go.
It's not like I surprised you with this.
It's like, oh, we're supposed to be buying stuff? I'm constantly buying stuff, even though I shouldn't be. So mine is good old Dusty.
Oh yeah, I've passed it 14 times in the last 3 days, and I didn't pick it up.
Good old Battle Cat Stripe Dusty. I am on board for Tiger Force, and I loved it. I don't remember offhand if the Battle Cat colors were there in the originals. Were they there in the originals?
Dusty was that color. They either had the green color like you're looking there, or the gold stripes.
Oh, that's fantastic! I love it.
Yeah, like Dusty was that color, and I want to say Flint had black with yellow stripes on his jacket. Maybe
these are all going straight to Battle Cat. So the fun thing was, I actually managed to find this online, fairly cheap. So if you have not gotten a hold of Dusty yet, this one's yours, because I can get another one pretty quickly. And I like Dusty.
Kind of you. No, I didn't pick it up.
Yeah,
I was considering when we were at Target the other day buying them, and then you convinced me that I could find them cheaper somewhere, and then I have yet to do the search.
Yeah, and this was very much an impulse buy. So if you want this Dusty, you can have it. I don't need that Dusty.
Tom, your generosity is just overwhelming.
You owe me. Just
true.
kidding.
I do. Well, plus, you're my plus one and two guys talking toys. So.
This is true. Debt paid.
So yeah, instead of like giving a corsage or something to be the plus one, I get an action figure, which is cool. So sad news, I don't have anything new. Good news, I did get a rescue today in the Aldi's parking lot, and he's very tiny little mule or donkey. Looks like he would sit nicely on the bottom of an eraser.
Oh.
But he's a smiley little cute guy.
Oh, that's hilarious. He looks like what's the name of there was a show. So you remember Elliot from Law and Order?
Yes.
Elliot Stabler. The show that he did after that, Happy.
Oh, yes.
With the weird like unicorn magical friend thing. That's what that looks like, except it's green.
Yeah. It does. It's very little, and look, he'd sit on the back. God, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Christopher something. He did the voice of the Green Lantern in the animated movie.
Oh, I don't remember his name offhand.
Yeah,
but that is really
at like 2 a.m.
That is really cool.
Yeah, it's my little rescue.
We'll join the
and
island.
He's so bright green, like he stood out.
Which makes you wonder how he was abandoned to begin with. How do you miss that?
These rotten kids, they don't care.
They don't.
They get pencil toppers all over. So, right. What are we talking about tonight?
He's gone to a better place. All right.
That's
so,
right.
as you recall,
and he won't have a pencil shoved up his butt.
It'll be a nicer, easier existence. So, if you remember last week, so I
I
last
don't.
week one of my pickups. I know look,
It
listen,
was one of my blackouts last week.
listen, it's getting more difficult for all of us every time, every day, every hour of every day. So if you recall last week, my pickup from PowerCon was Tanger, and
Yes.
my first thought, aside from how cool he looks and how neat he's going to look hanging out with the primitive Beastman repaints,
Mm-hmm.
my other thought was I'm going to change his head because I love cats and lions and tigers and things, and he would look really cool with like a cat head. And I'm going to do it by getting a cool 3D print. I'm going to print it and I'm going to tweak it and I'm going to put it on there. So
That
I
would be
would like,
one bad dude cat.
yeah, and I like that like I said, I don't mind that he has gorilla proportions. If anything, that makes it more of like an interesting creature because
Right.
why is there this cat creature with giant forearms and kind of stubby legs coming at? It's
Like
terrifying.
just escaped from Skinwalker Ranch or something.
Yeah, or the island of Dr. Moreau after he's been on a bender.
Yeah, that's like a show exclusive figure that you're just gonna rip the head off of.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to throw it away, but yeah, I feel like
I
a
still,
new head on him would be great. And this was something that I did a lot. Oh, our topic is 3D printing.
all right. I forgot
No,
I asked you a question.
because
3D
it's
3D printing. All right.
3D printing, and it's another topic that I honestly think could be 2 episodes. Don't worry, people, it will only be 1 episode.
Oh, we can't do the hat trick 2 episodes.
We'll just abandon us in mass. All right, enough.
Right. So this, if we did 2 episodes of this, it would be the Tom soliloquy on 3D printing. So let me tell you what little I know about 3D printing.
What do you know of 3D printing?
I know that it's an older technology than most people think about because
yes, it's actually been around since the 80s.
Yeah, and if I recall, it was so I met a guy at a show a bazillion years ago, and it wasn't like a convention like we go to now. I was working, and it's called the Idea Show. I don't even know if they still do it. This was maybe 2005, 2006. And I was working for a material converting company. They did a lot of things for a lot of different industries, right? And so we would go to the Idea Show, and we would try to find something cool that we could incorporate to try and expedite our production and marketing and things of that nature. So there was different technology stuff, marketing, like when Salesforce first came out, that sort of CRM software was at shows like this, And I remember walking in the door first off, and this very enthusiastic guy had a little plastic gizmo that had gears that would move and yada yada, and he was proud that it was 3D printed.
Yeah,
and I was flabbergasted. And the funny thing is, with everything moving, my first question was, and this was like I said, 2005, can you make toys with this? And he was like, yeah, we probably could. But when it was done, like, I think, like in the 70s, it was being practiced, but not like we think of it today, like with a plastic over, like they would do like liquid metal over a substrate, And the reason why I was interested in it is because we had we made articulating paper, and we sort of cornered the market. That you got to bite on it at the dentist, and it's got wax on it, and it'll leave color on your teeth, and then they can see where the peaks and the valleys are in your teeth, and they can adjust, right? So we wanted to do that ourselves, and we bought a machine that was early, like turn of the century technology, and it was simplistic in theory. So it was a roll of paper, right? And it would go and get hot wax put on it, and then it would roll over another roller, which was big, and it was metal, and it was filled with cold water, and then that would coagulate the wax on the paper, and then we could cut it to the size we needed. But being turn of the century technology, if something broke, we wouldn't be able to fix it.
Yeah.
So I was interested in this guy because they were old metal nozzles. And if one of them broke, I could replace it with a 3D printed nozzle that I wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. So my introduction to 3D printing was through this very enthusiastic guy, but it was industrial. It wasn't recreational, and it was big machines doing it, and they were
Yeah,
expensive. Like what? Like I don't know, even know $5, $6, $10,000 for those kind of
that
machines.
sounds about right.
And then he turned me on, and I started talking about toys and science fiction and geek stuff, of course, like I always do. And because I didn't really want to work, I wanted to talk about geek stuff. And he turned me on to a short story, like a sci-fi short story. I vaguely remember it, but I do remember some parts of it. It was like a 1945 short story by Murray Leonard or something of that nature. Murray something with an L.
Mhm.
And in that short story, he was describing a machine that would use what was the term he used? Magnetophonic plastic
Mhm.
that would come through an arm that would draw something in midair and
Okay.
create it. So once again, we're talking about technology that came out of the idea of sci-fi, and a lot of the technology that we take for granted at one point was written about on sci-fi, like the FaceTime, like when we
Yeah,
watched the Jetsons, right?
yeah.
We were seeing
I,
FaceTime, right?
FaceTime, like the microwave. What was that on Star Trek where they introduced like this box you could put your food in? It would come
Yeah,
out. You put it in cold, it would come out hot. Uh,
yeah.
I'm
I
waiting.
got to tell you about the first time we got a microwave. Like a person came to the house to demonstrate it
Uh,
and put a marshmallow in there, and it got big, and they popped popcorn, of course, and it was a big to do. The thing was like monstrous, though. Like a toddler could have slept in there.
our first microwave, my mother would make us leave the room when we used it, prompting prompting the question, Mom, why if it's that dangerous, why did you let it in the house?
Right. So it went from this
It
big.
wasn't dangerous, but
Right.
the
They
perception
made you
was this
feel
was
like you
new
needed to put a.
technology.
That always
Yeah.
makes me laugh when you go to the dentist. They put a lead vest on you and then they shoot you in the face, right? But anyway, we digress as usual. But now, like those giant industrial things that we talked about now are now sitting on people's desks. You have one,
Mhm.
right? And now it's a little heated nozzle, right? That's layering plastic on itself, thermoplastic, right?
Mhm.
Some kind of thermoplastic, and that's it. That's all I know about 3D printing.
Oh, okay, well, you're pretty. You've got it in a nutshell, and it did start off as much more, yeah, like kind of an industrial usage. It was used for manufacturing, yeah, like industrial parts, pieces. People might be are probably familiar with the term AutoCAD, and CAD just stands for computer aided design.
Right.
But it was applied to things that were probably considered a lot more practical at the time. Yeah, like pieces of machinery. We need replicas of this. We need, and then once AutoCAD began, it was, and a lot of people who may have
Wasn't
taken
there
shop
another one that had
class.
like a weird name, like something right out of like an old sci-fi, like MakerBot or something?
There is a MakerBot.
Right, because
That actually
I
is a
knew that
thing.
one too.
Um, but yeah, like it was. Well, it became the shift was slow. It went from, yeah, like big industrial machine parts, and we just needed to create like a new hose for this, or a little turning piece for that,
Right.
and then automobiles, because that, that was becoming more. Well, we need, a new tiny piece that we can stick into the engine. I know nothing about cars, so
They do
they
construction now. Like
mhm.
they 3D print buildings, houses,
Yes.
because the construction industry is so wasteful. And
Oh
you
yeah,
can
and
read all about 40% of our carbon footprint comes from construction, but
it
3D
has
printing is much cleaner.
it has way more practical usage than I think it's growing faster than people want to accept. And
Yeah.
there's a lot more things that you can do with it. People just need to do it. But getting back to toys,
Yes. Let's go back to toys.
the original, yeah, we were all as collectors, we're all fairly familiar with the toy making process. Where originally it was, wax models, clay models. You would make your mold, you would do your casting, and you would go from there. And then slowly it started to move from, especially with the changeover of technology, using computer aided design to now design your product and actually start printing that. And even if it wasn't the whole figure at once, it became like little by little. And I remember when I was in college and wanting to figure out how, because I was trying to get into molding and casting, because I knew that was like a way to make your own piece. And there were people that were making like their own sort of action figures and producing them that way. But like computer-aided design was going to be the way of the future, and it was becoming more and more a lot more of the standard.
Right.
And then as we move further and further along, we now hit the point where I want to say, let's say 2005-ish or so. A friend of mine, we got really, really into the idea of 3D printing, and he was able to get in touch with a company called Form Labs, which a lot of people are probably familiar with.
Form Labs.
Form Labs,
Okay.
and they
That was still expensive at that point, wasn't it? Didn't it really
still
like,
super expensive.
Even it really came into its heyday, affordability anyway, at around 2010, 2011, right?
Yeah, and even I want to say even a little bit later than that, because if you're looking at Form Labs, who makes the people may be familiar with the Form 1 and the Form 2, those machines were in the upwards of $2,000-$3,000 to invest in. Prior to that, people were experimenting with, again, my friend of mine, he was experimenting with filament and having the spools of PLA plastic where you would almost like a sewing machine, where you would run the thread through this machine, and you would have like the spool set up on the side. The thread itself of plastic would run into this machine, and it would have like a cross section on top, almost like an Etch-a-Sketch, and it would come down, and it would, like, you would program in, or you would take like your 3D model, and you would tell it you want this thing designed, and then it would come down, and it would draw, and then it would layer up as it went, which was cool, and you could tweak it to kind of get what you wanted, but it was very the texturing was unappealing. You could not get fine detail.
You could see
with filament.
the slices.
Yeah, it was almost like if you just had a ton of really thin Legos stacked on top of each other. Even if it looked kind of like what you wanted it to look like, you still had that texturing to it. You just couldn't. The ideal is to have action figure, like just full smooth plastic, and you weren't going to get that with a filament. I'm sure that they've advanced since then, but that was not the way to go at the time. So then he moved on to Form Lab, and they were still kind of up and coming, but they had come up with they were using resin instead of the spooled plastic, and resin's a whole other ball field. You have different
and that's the step up, right?
I feel like it's a step up. I know there's a lot of people who are kind of loyal to filament, and they've done some really cool looking stuff, but resin is kind of where, that's kind of where we're at right now. And you can get different kinds of resin to do different kinds of things. And it's funny that you mentioned the dentistry aspect of it, because now Form Labs has a whole series of machines that are dedicated just to dentistry.
To like make dentures and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, replacement teeth, dentures, caps, the whole nine, and you can 3D print this stuff now. So you can get that once you make that impression, they can then take that, scan it in, and now they have like a 3D model of your teeth, or whatever tooth that they need
whatever it's supposed to be,
and then they can just print it, and it's this multi-million-dollar like subsection of their business. But they also do a lot of they've become much more aware of the collector base, because it all seemed to kind of explode at once in 2000. I want to say 2012, 2013. There were a lot of people, and I wandered around in the Transformers community, and there was a lot of people there who kind of messing around with.
Well, listener, he doesn't actually mean that he walked around a village filled with Transformers, because then he would have never come home. He's talking about people who enjoy the Transformers franchise.
I may have had to come home, because if I did stumble across a village of, say, like Micromasters, you're telling me you wouldn't have picked up a bunch and forced them to transform? Just because, I mean, it's kind of fun. I would have been their Gargamel to their being a Smurf village. Like, it just wouldn't have worked out too well for anybody involved.
The Smurfs come up a lot on our show.
That's because they're terrible and they have it coming.
Terrible little trolls.
So in the Transformers community, there were people that were starting to create replacement parts or replacement bits. And maybe like a new head for a character, or like someone's gun, because whatever gun existed wasn't the same. But there was still kind of no way to produce it unless you had, X number of thousands of dollars on top of a program. And the programs have come a long way since then as well.
Right.
We, way back when the computer aided programs were really, really difficult to figure out. When I went to college, computer animation was super duper new, and the people who were teaching it barely understood what it was. So trying to figure out 3D programming on your own, much less designing something for an action figure, was like unheard of. But there were a few people that had figured out how to do it. Since then, there have been programs that have been introduced that make it a little bit easier. And in particular, a program called Mesh Mixer, which is
Mixer.
Yes.
Okay.
There is it's a very basic program, but it allows it being very basic allows you to do a lot more things than you normally would with a program that has a lot of restrictions, like say a program like Sketchfab, which is also a good program, but very, very much more like if you were making gears and things, like it's very good for that kind of
still
thing.
Has that industrial history built into it. Yeah. Okay.
Now, the current standard is a program called ZBrush, and that is what you'll hear kind of just about anyone that works in 3D sculpting. That's the program they use. It's like the Adobe Photoshop of the 3D printing world. Everyone uses it.
Nice.
I have been attempting to teach myself to use it with varying degrees of success, or rather lack thereof. But it's been something that you can design what you want. You can then take those files and using whether it be I believe Formlabs is probably up to their Form 3, possibly 4 by now. But there are more companies have jumped on. Like they've started to realize, hey, this is something that we could probably get in on. Enter a company called Elegoo. And despite the weirdness of the name,
Elegoo.
Elegoo.
Elegoo. Oh, okay.
Elegoo.
That would be an unfortunate name for Miss Ella. If her name is Elegoo.
You know what? There are people wandering around right now who are over the age of 20 named Cloud and Sephiroth. So I mean, it's such how terrible the names are.
I got to tell you, when I moved away from the production, and 3D printing for a long time wasn't really in my head. Like I knew it existed. I knew there were good things being. I mean, they were even doing artificial hearts, things like, you know what I mean? Like there are good things happening with 3D printing. Best of all is the toy industry. And I can't say that again because the American Heart Association will come after me, and then just put them on the list. Put them on the list of people coming after us. But like even speaking to you when we first started talking out, I don't even know how many years ago now, but like your experience and you telling me what you're attempting to do, and I'm not a technology guy. Like I'm not exactly a Luddite, but I'm not a technophobe. You know what I mean? I use technology when I have to, but I don't seek it out like you do. And you've got an eye and an ear and nose for how to use these things best, and it's an interest of yours to, like you just said, teaching yourself. To me, and like customizing, like we've gone to lots of shows with custom stuff, and we've even done interviews with people who are doing really good things. And to me, like the idea of it, the technology that does it is, now that it's come into fruition, is easy to understand. How it's done technically, like logistics of it, how it's working is easy to understand. The thing that boggles my mind is, so you, Tom, have, because you've got an artist brain, right? So you think of a character like, oh, it would be cool to have this character, and that artist brain of yours creates it in your head. The face, the body type, the weapons, because that artist brain has painted that onto your internal retina, right? And now you're sitting at a computer, and somehow you've got to take this image that you would normally sketch and draw beautifully, and create points on a computer, X and Y and Z axes, and get this thing off your internal retina onto a computer screen in a 3D rendering. And that to me is wizardry. Like people who can draw well, like I could draw. It
Mhm.
takes me a long time. Like this, I could draw.
Yeah.
And there's a Dr. Doom up there that I drew. But like I could draw, but not in the way that you can. I want to hear about how these people who are doing great custom things like we've seen at the shows and you're figuring out how to do, how does that design, like the logistics of the printing, the actual physical event is easy to understand.
Mhm.
Hot plastic nozzle sliced. How does the design happen?
Um, honestly, I am still trying to figure that out. Like as far as
Broad strokes.
as far as like the programming and whatnot, there's not, I guess there's not really much to tell. If you are able to wrap your head around going from a 2D image to a 3D design, uh, it's drawing, but in 3D. If for even though that sounds simplistic, it very much is not. The program itself, uh, you have to manipulate. You have to take whatever. A lot of people have different ways that they sculpt. ZBrush is very multifunctional in that it allows you to maybe sculpt by bringing a lot of like symmetrical shapes together and then smoothing them out and then adjust, manipulating them from there.
So it has
You
that
can
pyramid look, like those old like 80s sci-fi movies where everything's sort of triangular and then you're just
yeah
kind of smoothing out
yeah you
those rough
can
spots.
yeah
Okay.
there's a lot of squashing
Like
and
very,
stretch.
very Max Headroomy, but smooth.
Yeah, there's a lot of squashing and stretching that goes on. There's a lot of like meshing of objects together.
Squashing and
There's
stretching. Sounds like me getting out of bed in the morning.
also if you're an early level Looney Tunes cartoon.
I'm like a
There's,
cephalopod getting out of bed. I just kind of squish over.
yeah, I lean more like the Slinky. There's a lot of noise. Sometimes I make it over, sometimes I don't. Um, but you
What a wonderful toy you are, Tom.
but you the program itself is amazing. The thing that fascinates me the most is being able to design in it and then put together something that you can then you can print that at home. You could also have one of the things I forgot to mention. There are companies that started to notice that 3D printing is something that people want to do for for industrial, for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There was a gentleman named whose screen name was, I think, was Dr. Strange Fate, who started
Doctor
producing
Strange Face.
Strange Fate.
Oh, so it's like Doctor Fate and Doctor Strange had a baby. Strange Fate.
Yes,
Got it.
yes. And he started putting out these. There was a company called Shapeways. There's also another company called
Man, a
Sculptio.
lot of plugs
There,
tonight. A lot of plugs.
yeah, there's a ton of different companies involved. There's a ton of different artists that I'll be bringing up. Strange Fate was one of the people that I noticed first. He has started producing these beautiful looking 3D sculpts, but he was actively separating them into joints, torsos, heads, and one of the items that I wound up purchasing off of his Shapeway store was this figure here. It's probably a little difficult to make out, but he had these warrior
Yeah, I can see it. Looks good.
characters, and they were amazing. This is a
How articulated is that? Oh, there you go.
It's fully articulated. You can.
Wow, you just boogie down.
It is it's like at the time it was almost like Marvel Legends
Yeah,
style
that's
articulation.
great.
It has
So
it has
so to do
it
that,
has a
you'd have to
thigh
3D
swivel. It's
print
got
each one of those parts, right, and then connect
yes.
them.
So, well, the thing with Shapeways, there's it's such an interesting process. There's so many different ways that you can 3D print depending on the machinery that you have at your disposal. Shapeways has even though it's resin, they have a powder version of resin. And the way that their technique happens is that they'll have a vat. They'll have a vat of this powder. And just like the regular resin 3D printers, where you have your vat of resin, you have the plate that comes down, and then a laser is shot up and it cures just one layer of it. that happens with the powder for this figure.
So
And
the laser gets shot into a pile of powder.
yes, and it
And
literally
then
like
it pierces, and then you kind of like blow the powder away, and then there's a figure in
pretty
there.
pretty much. And the
Wow.
and the
Can
crazy
I do
thing
that
is,
with the packet of cheese for the mac and cheese that I get?
depends on if it's American cheese or not.
I
You
don't actually think it's actual cheese.
you
It's
may
like
you may have to add the flavor packet from the ramen noodles to
perfect.
get the exact kind of figure you want.
I'm on it.
But you but
If it's like your figure's
this
horrible, yeah, but
delicious,
salty.
also super articulated. The the way that you are able to I don't know the specifics of it, but you are able to, if you wanted to, because of the nature of the powder resin, you could print this entire figure assembled and then take it out of the vat and then just start moving it around, dusting it off,
That's like
dusting whatever.
Hogwarts level
It's
magic to me.
and resin has now kind of achieved that same level of complexity where you could, like, if you printed a chain, depending on the way that it was designed, you could just print that chain and not have to do the individual links. And once you remove the supports from it, you're all set.
Man,
I
we've come a long way from the Play-Doh Fun Factory that you and I had when we were a kid to
We
make
really have, and my
things grow hair.
it it amazes me the implications of this within the toy industry has always blown my mind, because we're now getting we're hitting the point where, you know, customizing is one thing. Having a, like Hasbro right now has the selfie series, which is fine, which is great, and I like, and I'm glad that they're opening it up just a little bit more. But can you imagine if, you know, just like the microwave, just like a lot of our home appliances, these are becoming a lot more user friendly. They're becoming a lot, the prices are going down, availability is going up. The first 3D printer that I actually owned, and I feel like it's almost a rite of passage for people that try and get into the world of 3D printing, to own a horrendous piece of garbage first. You have to buy something that looks like it's going to do the job you want it to
I'm
do.
glad you're not giving out a name. A horrendous piece of garbage, like
Oh, I'll give you a name.
like the 3D Smartron 4000. Right?
I'll give you a name.
Oh, great! Let's get another company on
it's
board.
called Daz. They had a Kickstarter.
DAZ.
DAZ. They had a
I thought
Kickstarter.
You said Dad at first. I was like, yikes! Is he?
I'm real mad at him right now. We're gonna have it out. But it was a they did a Kickstarter. I supported it. We got the premise of the machine is great. The actual functionality, non-existent.
Is that the thing you have with the like glass cube?
Yeah, it's got like the amber coating on it. Everything about it, like, it should be the perfect machine, but the coding for it, all the system information that should make it go, just terrible. And I am nowhere near a computer programmer, so I can't get it to work. So it just holds down all of my papers. However, the Elegoo Mars,
maybe you can put a beta fish in there.
All the water would fall out of the bottom. But the next step for me, because I couldn't afford a Form 1 or Form 2, because they're still kind of pricey. They're worth it, but they are kind of pricey, and they're up there. They actually,
so what are we talking? 3-4 grand?
Yeah. If you're looking to get, I mean, the Form,
put it on layaway.
3, I don't know if they have payment plans. But the Form 3 is probably going to run you about, anywhere from 2 to 3 grand, possibly more, and then you have to pay for the resin itself. Now, granted, Formlabs has, and this is kind of the next issue that you run into with 3D printing, is what kind of resin you want to get the kind of consistency that you want, because you don't want a super hard plastic piece because it's brittle, it'll snap. You want the goal has always been to get that plastics that as close to plastic as possible. So Formlabs had a resin that was called Durable, which was real close to plastic quality. Not quite rubbery. It was, you know, like the name says, it was durable. So you had a little bit of give, but it wasn't like rubber, and it wasn't so brittle that like it would snap if you start twisting around. Great for making joints for elbows and knees. So I always wanted to get a hold of that. But the resins that are made by the company Elegoo, those are fairly close as well. And I believe probably a lot of people that have 3D printers. The gentleman that we met at Legion's
Oh,
Con,
I love
who
that thing. When you
made
bought that, I was so
yeah,
excited.
who made these 3D prints like the gator skull, the dragon skull. I bet I'm
I
fairly
love the idea
certain.
that you could buy those, and then you, somebody who has talent, unlike me, who would just splatter them with whiteout, can actually paint them and make them look good. Like the big boa that you
Yeah,
did was fantastic,
yeah,
and I love that piece. I love it. Um,
and this is why I get so excited with the idea of 3D printing, because we have the technology to do it now. It's becoming a lot more affordable. A
you
lot
can
more
make it
people are able
stronger,
to get those.
faster, better.
Yeah, a lot more people are getting these in their homes. And now, can you imagine a toy company of any kind saying, here's the new piece, here's the
Mhm.
new head, here's the file for it, print it and add it to your collection? Because there are people that are doing that. There are people that
Right.
have who are creating like full 3D action figures online.
And you can
Uh,
get those parts, like
most
you said earlier, parts, weapons, heads,
Yeah,
gear,
the people.
and then people are then printing like the straps and then
Yeah,
adding soft goods to it. It's
I
fantastic. I
I
have a
believe that.
question for you.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So you said before about how this could potentially impact the toy industry, right? Now, do you think like when do you think that switchover is going to happen where big toy companies are moving away? I would imagine most of the designers now are doing some sort of CAD design
Mhm,
and then they're going to the sculpt. You know what I mean? But like, there's always that layover of like old school sculptors making the toys
mhm.
and then the CAD designs and then the 3D
I
printing. Like how what are your thoughts on that? How this is affecting the culture of making toys on a grand level?
I think it's going to come down to when the actual toy industry, and I mean like the toy makers like Hasbro, Mattel, Spin Masters, those guys, when they start seeing a changeover in their money, as long as people are willing to pay for the figures that they're getting right now,
Mhm.
uh, I don't see like they themselves will use 3D printing, like that's not going to go away. But
Right. Because I keep
offering,
thinking like to how AI is affecting like the Screenwriters Guild right now.
mhm.
Like, are we going to see that kind of thing happening?
So I think that when you look at what the industry is doing right now when they're producing action figures, like we'll stick just with action figures right now. I don't think that the hand sculpted route is going to go anywhere anytime soon. And I don't know if that affects smaller companies that can't afford to do like 3D printing or whatever, but I 3D printing is definitely going to be something that is used, but I don't know if it replaces like hand sculpting. Like hand sculpting is not, I don't foresee that going anywhere uh anytime soon. 3D printing though is definitely, there's definitely going to be a lot more, like it's expanding. Like it's just, that's just how it's going to be. It's going to replace a lot of what were like the large scale uh prototypes. Those are still going to exist, except they're going to be 3D printed two ups. I don't foresee us. I don't want to say it's completely over because it's not. People are still going to do it, but I think more of that's going to lie in the realm of actually 3D printing that stuff,
Hmm.
and then moving forward from there. The I think it's all going to come down to money, um, because physically
Got to
creating
get that
action
paper
figures,
money.
yeah, like right. I mean, and it just comes down to the fact that for decades and decades, the institution has been, it's still molding and casting. It's still
Right.
giant
Right.
machines making molds, and that's where so much of the, that's why it's so
Master
hard.
molds.
That's why, yeah, that's why it's so hard for Master Mold to like, he's got to do Kickstarters to make more more Sentinels, and I think that's why there are a lot of Kickstarters that you need that initial investment to get the molds made, because that's where a lot of the cost is. Whereas if it was 3D printing, I think eventually, and this may not be for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, where they start saying, you know what, instead of having these gigantic industrial machines that are just pressing, action figures and doing injection molded plastic, why aren't we just using resin? But I think that may also be part of where the wait time is. We don't have a resin that is a one-to-one replica of ABS plastic that we see in action figures. Like right now, like I can take an AWOC figure and say, this head is cool, but I want like a different head. So I can 3D print one, but the texture of this resin does not match the texture of this plastic.
Right.
And until it does, and until
but you would have to try and camouflage that with your painting and your
yes, absolutely. I mean, and it works great. And honestly, this kind of resin is way closer than what we had even like 5 years ago.
That's not the durable that you spoke of. No,
this is not the durable plastic. This is just regular gray resin that I printed on the Elegoo Mars, which and it's it's fairly close, but it's not quite there
great.
yet.
From what I've seen, your stuff is great.
And I think that if it hits the point where we have a resin that can do what they need plastic to do, like one-to-one, exact, maybe better, because then if you could work out like the tolerance issue for joints, even better. But I think if we hit that point, then you'll see like a rapid changeover. I think that toy companies will move to start getting rid of especially if it's cheaper to do. Like I don't know how much plastic versus resin costs.
Right. Plus, you need to break out your chemistry books and just make something better.
That's not. I'll just make a new element, like Tony Stark did in that movie.
Right.
How hard could it be?
Yeah.
But I think that once we start seeing that, once that happens, and once enough companies realize that if it ever becomes more financially feasible to do 3D printing, like just on a mass scale, as opposed to the injection molding, then we're really going to start seeing a change, and that'll be interesting to see, because your production times change. I don't know how quickly it affects the quantity, but if like I said, a place like Shapeways in 2013 could print a fully assembled figure from scratch, so now you get into, we no longer need to have those. We always see those rows of legs and heads and torsos, and like now they just have to put them together and we'll ship them off.
Right. What kind of murderous place are you going to?
The same place that we discussed earlier. a lot of pig sounds in the background there. It's both for disposal and motivation. But yeah, like that kind of thing, like 3D printing, especially if you're able to print a figure, like a fully complete figure from top to bottom, and your only concerns then is the paint. I don't know, because even that can be machine applied if you get to the point where you've got a fully printed figure. You then move it on to just a machine applied bunch of paint apps, and then I don't know what goes into like the boxing, but it's amazing to think that this is the direction that we're heading in.
Right. And I don't doubt they're sending somebody back to kill Sarah Connor.
Absolutely.
The whole 9 yards.
And it's all because of 3D action figures. That's what the real war against the machines is about. It's John Connor being like
3D printed mechanical men coming back in time to kill you because you knew it was coming. You said it right here.
Like, look, John Connor said, you can't put this 3D painted alligator skull onto a Mythic Legions figure. That ruins the timeline. And I'm like, but how? It's
I
cool.
like that alligator head. I saw that and I wanted to put it on.
It's very neat. And
it's a Snoopy figure.
And there's all kinds of like smaller, just little things about 3D printing that kind of has an edge over our traditional printing styles with the with molding and casting. Little things like undercuts. That's a thing that you cannot print. The way that so many things are designed, they're done in such a way that if there's a detail that is kind of like down and underneath on a mold or on an object, you can't mold and cast it that way because it'll catch when you're trying to pull it out of the mold. If you're 3D printing though, that goes away. There's like you don't have to make a secondary piece.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
You don't have to cut down on the detailing. You can just go, and you know, it makes such a big difference because there's so much, you know, if you're designing something, you're like, oh, I can't do that. That's an undercut. If that's gone, you know, it removes so many limits. So I'm dying to see where this goes. There's so many places, there's so many people right now, there's so many talented individuals that are cranking out tons of 3D stuff. And yeah, again, we saw so many of them at Legion's Con.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
They are kind of like leading the way in this march towards having fully produced 3D action figures. And I think it really is just, I think, the money that is keeping it from becoming the new norm. Online, in like in more of a secondary manner, it kind of already is the norm. We can go and get 3D, like new 3D pieces for almost anything now. You can get 3D weapons and new torsos, and there are people that are so talented.
Backdrops and thrones, and I mean, any number. There's that place in Retro Relics, shameless plug, that we will have space selling stuff soon, and they, you know, they've got Magneto's helmet and all kinds of cool stuff. And actual action figures as well. Maybe not the quality like you were just showing us with that head, but you know, fun.
Yeah,
fun.
It's people playing around with it. It's that I feel like we're at that maybe like late 80s, like early 90s Toy Biz trying to figure it out stage when it comes to 3D printing. Not that stuff is bad. It's just we haven't had it enough. We haven't done enough with it. Even though there's been a ton of things that have been done, not enough where eventually I fully believe that 3D printed action figures are just going to be the norm. And that's when the larger companies will they will either have already taken notice, or there will be a shift, just like there was that shift from like hand-drawn animation to 3D. There will be that technological shift where they'll say, okay, well, this is what we're doing now. You can still kind of do the old stuff, but we're phasing that out. And then eventually we're just gonna have, here's the new piece, here's the new, and like I said, like once it gets to the point where so many people have a 3D printer, and maybe things advance to the point where resin becomes slightly less toxic. Disclaimer, everybody.
Made out of uranium. That'd be awesome.
I mean, there were those sets in what, like the 60s, the 50s, where it was like, here, play with uranium.
You should put it in watches to make them glow.
How could this possibly go wrong? Once we start getting to the point where maybe resin becomes a little bit safer, like we already have. Normally, if you're washing off a 3D printed piece, you have to wash it with alcohol to make sure that there's nothing left, because you don't want to touch it. You don't want it on your skin. You don't want to. You certainly don't want to eat finger food after it. But we're hitting the point now where you have water washable 3D. Water washable resin, and just tiny steps towards it getting cleaner and safer. And then you'll be like, we can just print stuff at home. There was a video game. I don't remember the name of the company, but there was a release of whatever game it was, and everyone does those pre-release bundles. Their pre-release bundle included STL files, which are 3D files, of some of the weapons for the game, which meant that you could 3D print those. And I was like, that's brilliant. Make more of those. And
so the video game came with the STL files that you could print out the weapons.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And it's exploded into so many different places: cosplay, tabletop gaming, and of course action figures. It is the march towards not to sound like a doomsayer, but it's a march towards the inevitable. Like we're absolutely heading towards a world where 3D printing is it's already taken over the concept phase.
Right.
It's only a matter of time before it hits the production.
Right. Somebody's going to come up with some, some way to make it done cheaper.
Yeah.
And that's when when somebody figures out what the next step that makes it more productive in a cheaper way, that's when it'll take off. I'm glad you picked this topic today because I learned a lot and you used a lot of words that I don't normally use. So that was great. And I'm glad you picked this one because like I said, I had a very limited view. Like I knew when it was in the in the new phase for
Mhm.
industry, but then it wasn't something that was on my radar anymore. So I appreciate it. That was a good topic. Good job, Tom.
Thank you. I'm glad you had. I'm glad you brought information from like your earliest encounter with it because I actually wasn't familiar with that. I knew of say like AutoCAD onward. So that is so today we both learned something, and I have to add the
And
one
that's one to grow on.
Now we just need barbecue to break in making robot noises.
That's right.
So listeners and viewers and subscribers and new people who are listening for the first time, thank you for joining us on an episode of Two Guys Talking Toys. I hope that you've enjoyed it. We would like to hear from you. Any thoughts that you may have on the topic of 3D printing? Let us know. Do you have 3D printed stuff? Are you a 3D sculptor yourself? Because I am fascinated with it. I can't quite do it myself yet. But get a hold of us on Twitter. Our handle is Two Guys Talking Toys. That is the number 2, no G after the talking. Or you can get a hold of us through Gmail. That is Two Guys Talking Toys, the number 2, no G after the talking. If you enjoyed the episode, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Drop us a like. That will help feed the YouTube algorithm. So until next time, take care, everybody.